We're live, WeatherBrains, the weekly show all about weather. You know what this is. This is the pre-show. This is for November 19th, 2018, the magical part of the show where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and occasionally say really outrageous things. Time of the show where we get all of our guests on, our regular panelists on, if we're lucky, and we try and start on time. And if you want to get right to the start of the show, just take that little scrub bar and move it about 15 minutes over, or maybe 20 minutes sometimes. But it is 8:16 Central. We typically start at 8:30 Central. And this should be a fun show tonight. We're going to talk about the snow mess in New York City, New Jersey last week. Uh-oh, Bill is in the Dewdrop Inn.
No, this is my living room and kitchen. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's a different place. It doesn't look familiar.
I gotta let you do the show tonight, James. I'm afraid y'all have an easy show tonight. Won't be hard to get Gary cranked up.
So you're not going to be on the show?
If it's okay with you, I've got a huge homework assignment to oversee.
Ooh, what that means is that there's 50-cent beer night at Hooters tonight. So we totally understand. You have
here, James.
So
Gary.
I'm having, I don't have Troy's email address, and there's no.
All right, I'll invite everybody. How about
that? I've got everybody invited that are regulars except for Troy.
Okay, all right, I'll hit you in just a second. Let me get Gary here because he's anxious for his invite.
Yeah, but just we'll let Gary and Dr. John take this one. So I got a
good round robin discussion. Yeah,
got an email from WeatherBrains, or not WeatherBrains, from YouTube last week. You have been using copyrighted material on your program.
Really?
You are in violation, and you're in big trouble. And we're going to tell the teacher on you.
They will let 1,000 Russian bots sit there and influence the American political system, and they worry about whether you played 15 seconds of Dr. Hook.
Yeah, it was Dr. John. This one. See, that's the one. That's the one they flagged. So, Dr. John.
They have algorithms that match all that stuff, sort of like
It's like Shazam. It's the same thing as the Shazam app. You're in some place, you hear a song you like, you press it, and it tells you what the song is. It's the same technology. So, and that was my bad because I did play more than 30 seconds because that's a long intro, and I wanted to talk up the intro and hit the post like a real professional disc jockey announcer guy. Yeah, this could be a fun show.
It's going to be a very fun show.
And I've invited the regulars except for Troy.
All right, I'm working on it. I'm giving you Gary's right here, James, even though I'm going to invite him by email too.
Okay.
Troy shouldn't be hard to find, though.
I've got like an email for him, but it looks like a University of Texas email or something. I'm not sure that's the one we should be using for the Hangouts here. So I just invited Gary.
All right, here comes Troy's in the chat.
No, I did not have that one.
All right, I'll add that one to the email just in case. Somebody just chat with us.
I just heard some Google chat noise.
You got Dr. John?
Yes, I did invite Dr. John. I've got his email, and when you stick the email in the invite, if it's right, then the full name comes up, and his seemed to be the right one. So we'll see. So it's Thanksgiving week for those that are watching later. But you know what's weird? People watch these things years and years after the fact, which is just strange. But it's Thanksgiving week for those that are watching.
That's Troy that's chatting with us, James. He was looking for his invite. He has to, like you said, and it.
Right. The deal is you have to use the right email. It's kind of they use with the Hangouts here. So, but Kevin's here, so this is going to be a great show.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
Got Kevin and Troy, and you round up Dr. John, and
yeah, we got to get Dr. John because Dr. John was part of this event. He was
Is Gary not coming?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
he is.
Hey, Bill, Troy here.
Hey, Troy, you in?
I'm in, man. This is easier than I thought it was going to be.
There you go. Yeah, this is going to be a killer show. I'm going to bow out and let y'all do it.
Does this involve computers?
One more night of homework. One more night of homework.
Troy, it's 50-cent beer night at Hooters. We know what the deal is. I mean,
I'm just going to rip this off in a minute. I got my Hooters t-shirt on. That's it. I don't need no stinking Hooters.
Whatever happened to the guy who wanted to do the pre-show, one of the pre-shows?
Yeah, there was a guy that wanted to make a show out of the pre-show and do that as a whole separate podcast because he thinks that would be very successful, which, could be. Some people do. What they'll do, they'll watch this and then they just turn it off and the show begins. So,
Whatever happened to that guy?
I guess he found somebody else's pre-show to make into a podcast. I don't know. This was probably 2 years ago when he came up with that idea. He said, I love the pre-show. It's the best part. You guys are funny and relaxed and it's goofy and you don't know what's going to happen. And when the show starts, it gets boring. So,
wow.
Well, not anymore.
Everybody could see.
There's actually some truth to that because I remember years and years and years and years ago when David was still here, and I sort of became the executive producer, and that was when we started like 101 and all those things. But we tried to format it a little bit, and everybody just shut up and stopped talking. It was like they were afraid to move, and I was like, "What's going on?" So we blew it all up.
Wow. Somebody just sent me this on the tweeter. Wow.
All right.
Dr. John, when he worked for the Weather Channel, he was the severe weather specialist.
Very cool.
And he still had the hair. They still had the hair of an angel back then.
Still hasn't moved an inch, has it?
No, that hair has not budged in 25 years. It's just like, and I have been with Dr. John and I have tugged on that hair before and it did not come off. So
that's really too much information.
I don't believe that it's a tope. Bill is trying to get Gary on here, but I've invited the doc, Dr. John. Kevin, I got the email from YouTube last late Monday night.
No,
you have been flagged for using copyrighted content.
That was 10 seconds.
Teacher. No, I did in the pre-show. I think I talked up the whole intro, which is like 30 seconds. No. It was my talking over Dr. John's right place, wrong time.
That's what happened.
Flag. It just says there's no need to do anything.
They didn't take it down.
No, so I didn't do anything, and they didn't take it down. It's still there. So I would assume it's some deal like Shazam, where they just monitor these videos for songs like that, and if it's more than 30 seconds or something, you get flagged.
Yeah, my understanding is they check everything and they compare the waveforms, and that's how they find it.
You see me? Yep. Okay. All right, I'm going to put my earbuds on. Hang up.
I thought you were going to tell me it was. They didn't tell you what part, just that it was.
No, it was pretty generic. I guess it's just a generic email they send out, and it also says. I remember it says you're not in trouble, but you. And there's no need to do anything, but be aware that you've used there's a claim or something, and they'd let us know if it goes to the next level. And I never heard back. I'd assume that's just the generic email you get when you.
That's the only email you've gotten this week, James. That says you're not in trouble. So
that's right. That's exactly right. It's a shock. Hey, Gary, can you hear us okay?
Apparently not.
Oh, Gary. No, he can't hear us.
Oh, that's not good. His earbuds don't work. His regular connection works, but his earbuds don't.
So
I'll ring him up.
Gary's got that Christopher Walken look tonight. I mean, that's the Christopher Walken look right there. He was the no more cowbell guy.
It's Gary.
Hey, Gary.
No.
Okay. Yeah, he's not able to hear us. We can hear him. So there we go. And where's Dr. John? I know Dr. John wanted to actively discuss this situation because he was in the midst of it. I might invite him.
I could hear James when I first started, but then it all dropped out.
And for those that don't
hear Gary now,
we hear him fine. He can't hear us. But for those that don't know, that are watching for the first time, the higher the IQ of the guest, the longer it takes to get them on the show for some reason. We don't know why that is. And notice that was the first one here, which speaks volumes.
Yeah, that's why Bill and I are always first on.
Yeah.
Kevin, we didn't join till late. Yeah.
What?
You guys came in late, so
you late. Yeah, there you go.
Big IQ here. Let me try and invite Dr. John one more time. He came on early last week. Let's see. I will not disclose his email address to the world. I'm pretty sure it's a Comcast.net address. So let me drop it in there one more time. And his name pops up, and that should be him. So you guys working Thanksgiving? Anybody but me? I know I work every year.
I was going to, and my weekend guy came to the rescue the other day and said, nope.
John, we got a picture for you, buddy. Hang on. This is on the tweeter tonight.
Oh, you're way overmodulated there.
Yeah, give us a mic check there, John.
Hey, ABC 1 2 3.
Yeah, looks like it settled back.
That sounds good. No, somebody on the tweeter sent this in. What year was this?
Oh, that was probably 99, May 3rd outbreak.
Wow.
Yeah, you remember that tie?
Yeah, I probably still have it.
And your hair has not moved 1 inch since then. Unbelievable. Wow.
Looks like I have a southern tan.
You do. You're a well-buffed, tanned-up guy there. I mean,
boy, I remember that night. I won't forget that. You know, James, you've had experiences like that too. You just don't forget them.
Yeah, so this really was May 3rd of 99 then. I thought you were just joking. So this was
No, I think it was May 3rd of 99.
Wow. Goodness gracious. How hard was that?
I don't know. Something happened. I don't see you. I just got your face. I just got your...
And for those that are, we can hear Gary, but Gary can't hear us. So that's as soon as we get him on here, we'll start the show. In fact, we're about to hit TV in about 45 seconds. Anybody know why 78 is not moving?
70. Oh, a road?
Yeah, as in the interstate?
It intersects with Interstate 269. It's got to be Memphis. Why do people send me these traffic things? I have a strange life. And good evening. Welcome to our television viewers. It is 30 minutes after the hour. This is WeatherBrains, the show we do on Monday nights. And I know there's a few little spritzes out there on radar, but hey, we'll get you back to radar in about 2 hours. Just sit back and relax and watch the show, and we promise some entertaining moments here. We're in the process of the pre-show, getting our guest on, and once we do that, then we will be starting this. But we are now on cable systems across the great state of Alabama. So welcome to those that are watching. I got stopped in a store the other day by some guy that watches this thing every Monday night on television. And Bill, I don't think I can unmute him. He has to do that himself.
Were you wearing your show title sweatshirt when he stopped you?
I was not. I was in a supermarket, and the guy just tracked me down, and he said, "That thing y'all do on Monday nights, it's hilarious." That was the word he used, was hilarious.
Hilarious.
He appreciated the, I expected him to thank us for the good content, the great interviews, the good segments. He said it was hilarious. So if we're here to maybe we make somebody laugh, we're doing good. And again, for those that are just joining us, we're waiting on Gary to get the audio going here, because we're going to talk about, John, your snowstorm.
Oh, yeah.
Between you and Gary. Between you and Gary, this ought to be good. We're just going to sit back and listen to you guys air it out.
Does this qualify as a Madoki snowstorm?
I think it is, no doubt. A Madoki Jabroni snowstorm. Gary, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We're in business.
All right.
Let's get this thing started. All right. This is fantastic. So we're going to flip on a couple of recorders here, and John, I'll let you can you introduce Gary? Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll let John bring you in, Gary, and Bill, are you going to be on the show, or I think Bill's
No,
bailing.
I'm going to bow out, James, if that's okay with y'all. Y'all got a fantastic show now here set. So
okay. Have fun.
Thank you. Y'all have a good Thanksgiving.
All right, you too. Here we go.
You too.
We're going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, this is WeatherBrains, episode number 670. This is the weekly show that's all about weather. This is our pre-Thanksgiving edition for 2018. This is for November 19th. And we're getting so close to the holidays. And look who's here. Troy Kimmel, all the way from Tejas. Troy, getting ready for a big Thanksgiving?
Yeah, going to head with the family out to the Big Bend. So looking forward to that. So getting out of here.
Nice.
The Big Bend of Texas, huh? What's the deal with that?
No, I've never been out there, James, of all places in Texas. Just never been there. So looking forward to being out there with the family.
Looking for the Marfa Lights?
Yeah, going for the Marfa Lights or getting out of Austin, whatever one you like.
Mm-hmm.
And we have another Texan online with us, Kevin Selly, who is in Wichita Falls, Texas. You got some cold air coming in there? What's your weather like tonight?
It's chilly. Yeah, we're going for 32 tonight. We had it was touch and go through the weekend. We had a cold front, which we knew, and we're all week long because the Saturday night was the big Christmas parade. And that's a big downtown thing, probably one of the best attended things in Wichita Falls. And I was just worried all week because we had highs in the 60s, I guess it was. And it was a beautiful Saturday, but that front was timing out right near the beginning of that parade. And I was afraid people were going to say, "Oh, it's beautiful all day. Let's go to the parade." And then they would freeze. And it came in right on time, right about 6 o'clock, about an hour before the parade. So most people prepared, but I was standing with my wife, Tracy, getting her set up because she watched the parade before I went to find our ride. And this guy looked up at me, and he had a big old camouflage, sweatshirt looking thing on and a hat. And he looked up at me and he said, "I'm going to have to start paying closer attention to you," because he was wearing shorts at the same time, and he was pretty cold by the time that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty
little brisk. All right. Well, Dr. John Scala, I can't wait to hear you and our guests talk about what happened last week. So let me just bring you in. You introduce Gary, and you guys get into it. And I got a bunch of questions, so go.
Oh, so do I, James. Well, that storm that affected us in the mid-Atlantic and up into the Northeast, it was last Thursday. And we were looking at a transitional storm, starting out as snow, going to several hours of ice. And then the anticipation was that the warm air, the wedge of warm air, would come in, overwhelm what's left of the cold air at the surface, and it wouldn't be that big a deal. We would be dealing with rain by the evening hours. Well, guess what? The cold air, had other stories. It hung in all day. And what we thought would be a few hours of snow with a QPF resulting in just a couple of inches of snow turned into a nightmare. Here where I live in Lancaster, we had on the order of 5 to 6 inches of snow and sleet. In fact, it's one of the best sleet storms I've seen since the big storm that came through in '91 that set some low pressure records in the mid-Atlantic. So Gary's not far away. Gary Satkowski's former MIC at the office in Mount Holly. And Gary, you've got lots of stories about weather to tell, but this one in particular, I know you've written about it just a little bit. You've got some strong feelings about it.
Yes, indeed. The forecast here was a lot like what you described, unless you got up farther north, but for a good chunk of New Jersey, we were supposed to be in this transition zone. We were supposed to get an inch or two or maybe 3, and then change over to sleet or freezing rain, and then change over to rain. That was the forecast for where I'm at, which I'm almost straight east of Philadelphia. Now, further north in New Jersey, they were supposed to get more snow, but again, we're talking like maybe up to 4 inches. But then the transition was going to be more problematic north of Interstate 78, which is one of the southern of like the 2 interstates that run west out of New York City. North of there was supposed to remain a wintry problem. Yeah, it was supposed to change over from snow, but around or after sunset, it was supposed to. It was supposed to be snow to begin with, but then around or after sunset, it was supposed to change over to sleet and freezing rain, and then remain that way for much of the night. Now there too, that didn't pan out. That's where they wound up with like 6, 8, and a few spots got up to 10 inches of snow. So it stayed much more up there. The trade-off was. We traded in some of the sleet and freezing rain and got snow. Down closer to me, it just was more winter weather than was forecast. The transition was slower to occur. We just wound up with a lot more snow and sleet.
There were a couple of I'm overmodulated again, it sounds like.
No, you're good, Gary. John. That's some feedback coming from Gary's. I think he's using external speakers, but you're good. Go ahead.
Okay,
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know.
No worries. Well, as I watched this storm unfold, a couple of the parameters that I was paying particular attention to was the wet bulb zero. I was looking to see if that was actually migrating north early on with the snow, and it wasn't. And we were looking at some strong evaporative cooling. The temperature at my house went from about 30, 31 degrees at the onset of the snow, and it went down to 27.7. And when I saw that, I thought, we're in trouble. And the fact that the wet bulb zero stayed to the south and didn't budge north, while the 850 winds were beginning to crank up from the southeast, I thought we had a significant problem here. Maybe you could talk about, Gary, I look at ensembles an awful lot. Can you talk about how ensembles would help us understand what happened with this storm?
Well, to me, that's still kind of an open question. I was actually on travel. I was up in State College on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then very early Thursday morning. I was actually presenting up at Penn State on Wednesday. So I was paying attention to the weather forecast, but particularly up there, and I had a lot of meetings going on, so I couldn't see as much weather as I'd liked, but I was paying attention and watching for the changes in the forecast. I did see the same thing you did, where I saw the northwestern suburbs of Philadelphia all dropped into the upper 20s when the storm kicked in. I knew that was a problem because that was not in the forecast. I do have an open question about the ensembles. Once I got back here, I started looking at not just the forecast, but the National Weather Service offices do this 10th percentile and 90th percentile products. Basically, the storm will produce at least this much snow and could produce as much as this, a high end number, and then the forecast is somewhere in between. Those high-end numbers, the version I looked at when I got back here on Thursday morning, were still too low. Those 90th percentile numbers, we exceeded those across much of the region. So I don't know what was driving that particular ensemble forecasting. What the Weather Service put out is supposed to be about a 46-member ensemble, but I don't know what components, how much of each model. Subjectively, I've been told, and I think it's kind of correct, that the Euro did better than the GFS and the Canadian in terms of bringing snow in closer to the coast. But that's the operational commentary. I don't know exactly where what the operational models are saying. I didn't have a chance to dive into the ensembles as much as I would like. But I'm a huge fan of the ensembles, and so yeah, I would like to study those, particularly the ones earlier on in the process, to see what they were trying to convey.
Yeah, they were not showing any consistency, Gary. They were showing a range of outcomes. So the ensemble members were suggesting anywhere from 0 to 1 inch, at least here in Lancaster, 0 to maybe up to an inch at the low end. But there were a couple of ensembles that were showing 7 to even 8 inches of snow. So there was this wide range with very little consensus of opinion. In other words, there wasn't a grouping of any of the members. They were just spread throughout the column there.
And that's the other thing I'll share. Yeah, when I got up there on Tuesday, I visited late in the day at the forecast office at State College, and I was out on the operations floor, and that was the comment that it ranged from 0 to like 15, inches of snow. You had everything, and that's just I don't want to blame the models because that's why we still have people in the loop. But the models were not offering, I think, clear guidance regarding which way to lean. So the forecasters used their judgment. And actually, when I was up there, I think State College got into double digits, but when I was there, I mean, they were throwing around 6 to 8, so they were not that far off from what eventually happened up there. But I did hear a lot of worry that they were going to get 2 inches and then a ton of sleet and freezing rain instead. So,
hey, John.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
I want to just jump in with a question and a comment, because I used to work in Richmond, Virginia, and when I was there, I remember these cold air damming situations, and I always was fascinated by them. But one of the things that we benefited from at the television station was we were at the transmitter site. It was that we had a self-supporting tower in the backyard, and we could always tell when the cold air dam was starting to break, because the ice would start coming down off of the tower, meaning that the warm air was finally starting to come down and take over. And obviously we can't have a bunch of towers everywhere, but it just seems like it suggests or cries out for more continuous monitoring, especially in a situation like that where you could use it. If you were right along the I guess we don't call it the front range of the Appalachian Mountains, but if you had more frequent observations, even to a shallow height, you could say, okay, here's where the cold air is now, and here's where it was last hour, and things like that. And maybe I'm just, maybe it's not possible or not practical, but that kind of in-situation monitoring just seems like a perfect example.
Well, Kevin and John and James and Gary and everyone, I mean, this points out the problem, I think, that we see in precipitation type forecasting, even in James' neck of the woods and in Troy's and in Kevin's to some degree, and there's not that much information we have. A couple of years ago here in Austin, we were the models had said snow, and you know how unusual that is here. And as we got closer to the time, it's 26 or 27 degrees. It starts pouring down rain. And then I talked to some FAA air traffic controllers out the airport and found out there was a depth of above freezing air, a few thousand feet up, and how this precipitation type forecasting is difficult no matter where you go. We sometimes say you don't have that much of a problem in Bismarck and other places, but at the same time, you can have it further north, and it's something that James in Alabama and Troy and Kevin in Texas see. It is really a pain. Precipitation type, winter type forecasting is very, very difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even here in Wichita Falls, we kind of look at the cold air oozing down this side of the Rocky Mountains, similar to what I had in Richmond. And you get into severe weather season, and they'll send up an 18Z balloon to check on things and say, hey, what's going on midday? And so you wonder if that kind of thing, not on a regular basis, but if you're in a situation where it's especially where there's some confusion or some discrepancies or the models are going off in different directions, it seems like that kind of a thing would be helpful.
You would hope, Kevin, and I know that Gary, I assume the Weather Service offices have this available, but the ACARS data, the aircraft,
right,
it's very
That's what I'm thinking too.
Yes, but James, we don't ever get to see that. The Weather Service does, but it's useful.
Yeah, Troy, I was thinking the same thing. That's one way you get high resolution, low level soundings almost, although they're not quite vertical, obviously, but that would provide some really great high resolution time and space information.
I like to see Yeah, I like to see when our forecast offices, I know Austin San Antonio office does this, guys, where they'll actually check in with the ACARS data and discuss it in the area forecast discussion. And I like to see that last minute, as you're rolling along in an event. So I like the WFOs out there, the Weather Service offices will share that. So
for a shallow event too, like that, saying this out loud makes me wonder if maybe there is an opportunity to put more sensors on even just towers. Cause I know it worked for us. I think that thing was 800. It might've been 1,000 feet. I'm not sure if it was quite that big, but it worked in a cold air damming situation like us. I was at a thing up at Rick's office, the National Weather Center, a few weeks back with, Dr. Neil Jacobs, and he was talking about sensors. Sensors are the thing, sensors. And obviously we can't have them hovering around, but as many as we can find, every little bit helps, I would guess.
There were two other things that contributed, I think, to a real problem. This was November the 15th, not December the 15th or January the 15th. So this was the first winter event up here, and we had a sub-freezing ground in addition to a sub-freezing surface layer. So the general public wasn't ready for this, either in terms of their vehicles, their mindset, their driving capabilities. So there are horror stories up here of people sitting in their cars on the highways for 8, 10, 12 hours. In fact, some people fell asleep at the wheel because they've been sitting in their car for so long and had to be awakened to finally move their car off the road.
Wow. Those falling asleep are probably listening to this show.
But this sounds a lot like the Snowmageddon thing we had down here in 2014. Yeah. This affected Atlanta and Birmingham. And after the event, it was the blame game. Could you guys just kind of run through the blame game situation?
Well, New Jersey's governor was not very happy with the forecast and made that perfectly clear. He said, this event gave forecasting a bad name. He said that both during the event and then the next day at the press conference, he doubled down on it. So they're very unhappy. Named the Weather Service in particular, though they use some other sources too, but they didn't bother to name the other sources. But the Weather Service got drugged pretty good. So it's unfortunate that we got a new governor, and I think this sets a bad tone for the first year of his administration. And one of my first tweets out once I saw what he was doing, was basically, the next time he calls for an evacuation and he gets a poor, public response, I think we'll be able to draw back to, publicly bad mouthing, meteorologists. That's a perceived short-term gain. It's really not, but I think in the long term, bad mouthing meteorologists is not there's no positive upside to that over the long haul. So it's hopefully something one and done where he gets this out of his system. If not, I'll be tweeting some more, I guess.
One of the mistakes that was made up here is that all the school superintendents decided to everyone go to school at the normal time. We start the day at the normal time, but then they closed school early, and they did it in unison. So every school bus, every car was on the roads getting their kids. And so we had not only gridlock from that, but all the businesses decided to close at the same time. So, and this was actually at the height of the snow intensity in addition to the sleet. So there were some kids who actually didn't get home from school until 6 or 7 that night. And the school buses had left the school at 1 in the afternoon.
Wow.
What about, guys? I mean, Gary and John, how the DOTs, Department of Transportation's handle this, or did they handle it very well?
Sure. Well, a couple comments. One, I left literally at the crack of dawn on Thursday morning to get home as soon as I could prior to the onset of the precipitation. And certainly in central Pennsylvania, coming down out of State College, I was on US 322, getting down to Harrisburg to get on the Turnpike heading east. I saw a lot of trucks sitting on the side of the road, a lot of DOT trucks waiting. And we commented in State College the night before when we were walking out to go to kind of a late dinner, all the roads in State College were brined, and coming down out of State College, I saw the roads were treated, getting down to the Harrisburg area. somewhere east of Harrisburg when I was on the turnpike, that kind of went away. I didn't quite notice exactly when that stopped. But I would say for central Pennsylvania, PennDOT was sort of loaded for bear. I mean, it seemed to me like they, had done what you would do normally before an event. In New Jersey, it kind of became a mess right away. I can't quite say, how it developed in Pennsylvania once the precipitation started. I got home. It snowed on me for about the last 10 to 15 minutes of my drive home, so that was sort of a personal victory. The roads were still just wet when I got home, but they covered over very quickly. The evaporative cooling, the wet bulb zero we talked about earlier, took effect. I took a picture, and I said, sub-freezing temperatures and moderate snow will beat warm pavement temperatures every time, because our pavement was still warm at that point. It hadn't really frozen. We hadn't had any significant hard freezes. But what happened, a lot like what John said, the roads, Google Maps turned that ugly shade of red, which means, nothing's moving almost instantaneously as precipitation moved across the region. And all the roads gridlocked. And there was higher than average volume for that time of day. I'm talking about like 11 o'clock noontime. People were starting to cut loose. And again, that's another one of my big criticisms is they tried to run a full traffic load and they wound up running a full traffic load into the teeth of the storm. And again, the public criticism from New Jersey DOT was that, the weather service said it was only going to be 4 inches of snow, and we wound up with 8 inches of snow. And my comment back to them would be, you gridlocked to 2 inches of snow. The forecast hadn't had a chance to go bad yet, and you were paralyzed. and they talked about that the salt trucks couldn't move. They had plow. Once they realized what was developing, they were trying to get the plow trucks out there. They operate in groups, packs or whatever you want to call them, a chain. And they couldn't do anything because tractor trailers were jackknifing, roads were gridlocked, everything just got congealed. And so the bigger problem is the choices people made, and there may be a positive comment, a compliment buried way deep into here. I've heard a couple people talk about the fact that if we had said there was going to be 8 inches of snow, they wouldn't have held school, or people would not have gone into work. Some, personal comments that I never got in my car and drove to work. But I thought there was going to be 8 inches of snow this day. I thought with 4 inches, it was going to be more manageable. So the weather forecast, I don't think didn't do enough to dissuade people about it. The fact that it was not going to be a normal day. And again, up in the north central part of New Jersey, the trade-off was always going to be between snow and freezing rain and sleet, particularly along and north of I-78, about the northern third of New Jersey. I have no idea why they tried to run a normal day, other than the precipitation was going to come in there midday or early afternoon, and maybe they thought they'd have enough time to squeeze it in. But they were looking at either 4 inches of snow and then a bunch of sleet and freezing rain up north, northern part of New Jersey, or they got instead of what they got, which was 8 inches of snow and a lot less sleet or freezing rain. But either way, the traffic was going to gridlock with either one of those scenarios. There was no way out, and for some reason they didn't realize that. They did brine. New Jersey DOT was doing its explaining, and they did apologize, to the public regarding what happened. But they claimed they had the roads brined. They had the salt trucks out and running. So they say, and again, the whole system just came to gridlock anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They did brine around here too, Gary. I was out in the morning before it started, and they certainly were coating the roads. But I think you mentioned this. I think the precipitation rates completely overwhelmed not only the warm surface that you were talking about, but any effort to try to plow anything that was coming down. It was a thick mass of snow and ice, and the rates that it came down surprised me. I wonder also if we're still not doing a very good job about talking about uncertainty. That there was clearly uncertainty in the forecast, but maybe the message that got out there was, don't worry about it, a couple inches of snow at the most, but it'll all be gone because of the rain will come in and take care of it. Maybe we didn't talk enough about the range of possibilities.
Well, you're there. I'm in the middle of Texas, but John or Gary, what do you think the confidence was, or was there said anything about confidence of this forecast and its outcome.
Yeah, I did not see enough communication of uncertainty in the products that were coming out. I looked at that with a particular focus on the Mount Holly office. That's my old office where I worked, and even in certainly in the text products themselves, I didn't see as much as I would like, and even in the area forecast discussion, I didn't see as much discussion of, sort of like if this thing was to go bad, just how bad it could be. The one thing that was the one thing where I will give them credit was they did put out a briefing package that they ship out to all the key decision makers, and it's publicly available. So I downloaded it off their website. It was from Wednesday evening, which was before this precipitation had started. It started on Thursday morning, and they did say the traffic was going to go. That's partly what I was mentioning earlier about north of I-78, at least the part of the state that's associated with the New York City metropolitan area. They talked about how traffic would become very difficult. Now, they associated it with the freezing rain. They talked about road conditions becoming slippery with the snow, but then becoming much more difficult with the sleet and freezing rain. They got the right answer. They got there kind of in the wrong, the dots didn't connect in the same way. But if you're focused, we talk about focus on impacts. So if you're not worried, if you worry less about exactly how it transpires and you're focused on the impacts, I'm at a almost complete loss as to why northern New Jersey and the state, and as a result, the state, basically of New Jersey DOT and the storm team they have, didn't react strongly to that. They seemed to be thinking that it was going to be 4 inches. They'd clean up the roads and everyone would get home in time for the evening rush hour. During the evening rush hour, that it just there seemed to be a real lack of understanding that even if they'd gotten just 4 inches, they were then going to go. And I actually dove into the Weather Service products just to see, and a lot of places up in northern New Jersey, it was like 6 to 9 hours of sleet or freezing rain after 4 inches of snow. I mean, that's not driving friendly. That's not. And I saw all I saw New Jersey DOT doing was complaining about that we got 8 inches of snow and we were told we'd only get 4 inches of snow. That was their party line, and they were sticking to it. And I'll just say that I'll say this out loud. I made my displeasure very clear. And I didn't like in particular the national weather. I don't think in general public shaming is a good strategy, unless of course I'm doing it, then it's okay. But the idea that the Weather Service was the one that was particularly named, called out, and the New Jersey Turnpike has roadway sensors and has a separate contractor that provides them a weather forecast. And I made sort of a comment, I'd love to see this product, and someone was nice enough to show it to me, whether I should have seen it or not. And it was the forecast for the accumulation on the New Jersey Turnpike from south to north was 0.0 inches. Now the Weather Service only had 1 or 2 or 3 inches in there then with the quick changeover, but the guidance they got from their contractor that they paid for was even worse. So I would have preferred they not publicly complain about anyone. And I'm very displeased that they publicly complained about the National Weather Service when it was not the worst forecast they were working with. They had other sources that were giving them even worse information. So I have a lot of displeasure with how it was handled. And I'll stop there with my commentary at New Jersey DOT.
Oh, don't stop. Just go. And this is for really John and you both, Gary. I know this is a little out of your domain. You guys are dealing with Pennsylvania, New Jersey, but New York City didn't fare well. Are you aware of the forecasting process out of the Weather Service office up there? What happened in the Big Apple? It looked like a huge mess, just a bad deal.
That huge mess was, that's what I was, part of what kind of amazed me too is how little snowfall amounts, were required to produce a huge mess. They had measured 6 inches in Central Park. They were talking about 1 to 2 inches in Manhattan. I think even like on the early morning forecast package on Thursday. In the northern and western suburbs, they were higher than that, but it was significantly underdone there too, as well as along the entire I-95 strip. I was supposed to get less than I must have been in a sleet hotspot because I got like 2 inches of accumulation plus a ton of sleet, including a ton of sleet. But a lot of places close by to me here got 3 or 4 inches, and that's where you're supposed to get an inch or less. So there was a lot of under forecasting of the total amount of wintry precip right up I-95, including New York City. Now they had more time; they could see what was coming, and they had a chance to execute and get people out of harm's way, and they didn't do that quick enough. And even Southern Connecticut struggled. They again the snow numbers bounced up, and they didn't get out of town fast enough. I don't know how easy it is necessarily to execute on some of these things, but there was way too much traffic on the roads for the storm. And even if when the forecast was starting to go off the rails in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, there was more time for New York City and Southern Connecticut to react, and my sense is they didn't grab a hold of that.
Got a question for everyone. I guess I'm really interested in hearing what Gary has to say about this, kind of coming from the outside a little bit. But James, John, and Kevin, and everybody else, how good are broadcasters in 2018 about communicating uncertainty in their forecast? I mean, being a troublemaker, I figure I'll ask that question.
James.
No. Look, we're not good at it. Let me rephrase that. I'm not good at it. And here's my deal. I'm down here in the deep South. So we had snow flurries Thursday morning of last week. People freaked. We probably had like 10, 15 flakes, enough to write a word on your car in the light little snow that we had. So obviously the social science part of it is different down here, but we are coming off Snowmageddon, which was our big disaster in 2014. And I commented that looking at some of the pictures in New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, it looked like Atlanta and Birmingham back in 2014. And what happened with that, we got the forecast. The forecast was pretty close to being right. The impact forecast was horribly, horribly wrong. We figured on that event we might see an inch or two of snow, and really that's what we had. But it was so cold when it was snowing, and down here this never happens. It was 19 degrees. What I have learned, gentlemen, is the ice accretion process on roads is radically different at 19 compared to 30. Which is typically where we are. It's typically between 30 and 35. So we botched the impact forecast. But prior to winter weather events here, I don't think we do a good job. And I think the boom bust type thing is not a bad idea. And we need to do more of that, where this is what we're forecasting. But let's say it's a bust. If it's a total bust, this is what will happen. But if it's a boom, this is what might happen on the high end. And I think we need to do a better job of communicating the range instead of just trying to nail it with we're going to get 2 inches of snow tomorrow and draw these maps with these lines. I'm not so sure that's the right way to do it. To answer your question, Troy, I'm not good at it.
Well, I think you're probably best at it than a lot of people are. But at the same time, I wonder sometimes, Kevin, do the broadcast people that own our stations want us talking about uncertainty?
That's an excellent question. I think that's really prime real estate for some research. I think if I had to guess, and I'm just guessing, is that all of us want to, verify, and we all want to hit it on the head. There has been a lot of talk, as you said, about communicating uncertainty. But what I don't feel like I have heard yet, and maybe the information is out there, and I wish Kim were here, but I'm not really sure the best way to do that. And that's probably something that needs to be researched as well. But I do hear a lot of this give the idea that there is uncertainty and that people will accept that. But I just haven't heard a good way to do it yet.
And let me just say this too. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, go ahead.
I'll just say there is uncertainty in every snow event. I would love to find some meteorologist somewhere within the private sector or the government that says there is absolutely no uncertainty. We've got this thing nailed. I've been doing this 40 years. I don't think that exists. So we have to be good at communicating this.
Well, there's uncertainty in every forecast, period. I mean, to some degree,
Yeah.
some you have very high confidence, with certain things, but other times you have lower confidence. And I think it's interesting, Kevin, what you have to say. I'd be interested in hearing from Gary, kind of being from the outside a little bit and looking in at broadcasters and sort of what he thinks, or what you think, Gary, about how good are broadcasters at what they do at communicating uncertainty from your standpoint?
Again, for this particular event, I'll just again stress I did not have a chance really to see any of the broadcast meteorologists in action, so to speak. I was kind of watching on social media at that point once because I literally got here just as the storm was breaking. I don't have any chance to see them before, in the evening news the night before or anything like that. Having said that, I have attended a couple, broadcast meteorology, conferences for the AFS. I've talked with people. I've talked with quite a few people on Twitter, and I'd tell you it's a big unexplored domain to a considerable degree. That there's not the broadcast meteorologist has to want to do it, and then they have to convince themselves that they can do it well, and then they have to convince their boss that they can do it well. And if the consultants are wandering around, they have to convince the consultants that they can do it well. I think there's a lot of boundaries that you have to push through to do that. And, if you get a whiff that the ratings are starting to suffer a little bit, or you get any type of feedback that this isn't what is, that people want, then it would be dropped pretty quick. So it's difficult for a number of reasons, only some of which are really at the control of the broadcast meteorologist. I don't want to, they're not in charge of running the station operations. That's not how the system works, to my understanding. So, and then there's the whole thing of how do you convey that? A lot of people didn't like and still don't like. The Weather Service office in Mount Holly was doing this 10th percentile. Put out a deterministic forecast, which we've been doing for forever. But then also they would do a 10th percentile, at least this much snow, and then a 90th percentile. It could be as high as this, or I called it the reasonable worst case scenario. We got pushback on that from people who didn't like it, but a lot of the emergency managers did like it. Some of the snow crows liked it too. The people who want 10 inches with every storm, they love the 90th percentile stuff. But emergency managers like that. And it did answer, when people would say, why did you start doing this? I said, it answers a question that emergency managers were asking me since I started doing weather briefings for them, which is they would, at some point in time, they would typically ask, how bad could this storm get? Or what's the worst it could be? And they typically do that. Let's say you come up with a one forecast and there's 6 inches of snow in your forecast, and the next one comes out and it's 8 inches. That usually is enough to trigger a question after you get done doing that briefing. Well, I see the trend is going up. How do you think that's done? Or, how much more do you think it could go up, based on what you see? And that's a real uncertainty. They're asking you to evaluate uncertainty. They don't know that exactly that they're doing that, but that's what they're doing. So the maps, those 90th percentile maps, are very useful. I quieted a lot of criticism while I was still MIC at the office, that's what it was for. And they told us the first year we started doing it that they liked it. So there is a need out there for that. Not necessarily, I won't extrapolate and say for the entire general public. I think for weather enthusiasts and for people who need to, more sophisticated consumers of weather, like emergency managers, they need they need uncertainty conveyed. And how the Weather Service is doing it right now, I'm not going to tell you that's the best way it could ever be done, but it was good. It got good initial reviews, and it's still, and they're still looking at this year. They're still doing it that way. One other thing I'll note that I'm sorry to have to say this. I'm choosing to say it, but I'm sorry I had to observe it. The National Weather Service Mount Holly's website snow page was not working during the initial run up into this storm. So those uncertainty numbers were not available during during the planning process leading up to the storm. By the time I got back, I did jump on the page. I did see they had numbers posted, including the 10th and 90th percentile. But when I looked at it on Tuesday before I hit the road and going to State College, their page was not working, and they had a note out about it. So that didn't help. You know, when they got cleared up, I don't know. But we got off to John mentioned earlier, the first storm of the season. There was definitely some rust that had to be kicked out, you know, been knocked off the system.
Gary brings up a really interesting point, and Troy did too. Gary's point is different audiences need different messages but from a broadcast standpoint, we talk about communicating uncertainty, and you say, well, some people, you can't really say people will accept that, because some people won't. If you try and go into a longer discussion, some people like that, but then other people say, well, you just quit it and, you know, just tell me how much it's going to snow, which is really interesting. And the other interesting point that I've been thinking about since Troy said it is the perception, maybe this is the same point with different audiences, the perception of different people within the system. What does your general manager think versus what does your news director think versus what does your promotions department think?
True.
Because for however many years we've been touting, you know, well, we're more accurate than the guys down the street. And so they're pushing for accuracy. Maybe they're not specifically doing it, but the implication is you got to hit this on the head and be accurate, so that we can promote that and say that we're better than the guys down the street. All tough problems.
Yep. All tough. And if we take this as an analogy into the severe weather realm, talk about severe thunderstorms, everybody's response, individual response, really is a consequence of their own individual risk tolerance and their experience. And we can talk about winter weather as well. What you just said, Kevin, is exactly an experience I had at the Weather Channel. This was before they hired Paul Kosin, so I was doing some of the winter weather way before Tom Niziol was hired. So they asked me to do a live Q&A with WGN. So I went over next door to the radio side and did a WGN live interview, and a caller did exactly what you said, Kevin. I started to talk about uncertainty and the type of range of forecast that we were looking at, and he cut me off right in the middle, mid-sentence, and he said, just give me a number. So I gave him a number, and the next thing I heard was him hanging up.
Yeah. Clearly he didn't know who you were.
Hey, Gary, talk about the social media backlash, the haters, the trolls after this thing. What was that like?
Well, it was, I have somehow, I think, kind of almost organically developed some type of effective way to deal with trolls. I can't complain too much. I have relatively few people who wander on. You know, I used to, but I've sort of, again, I don't know what would be a good way to describe it, but they get sort of tortured by me a little bit and then given the bum's rush. And I think it seems to diminish the problem. I think some people who were trolling did actually have some good information. You know, the point I made earlier about how the forecast really drove people's decision making as to whether to go into work or not, or have school or not, was based on the forecast. It actually there was a troll who was very obnoxious in making that point, and I kind of again, after he made it, I kind of pushed him away, but I didn't forget about it. And then some other people said it in a better fashion, and I said, okay, now I'm starting to get the point here, you know, in terms of what you were thinking. Again, you know, some of the more serious trolling was coming from New Jersey state government, so that's an issue that needs to be dealt with, you know, sort of in a different manner. But you know, I think there was a lot of anger, but it wasn't. I had most difficulty with people who just were focused on the forecast being bad, and kind of stopped there. And that's why I was sort of developed these talking points about, you know, how the forecast, you know, the roads were gridlocked before the forecast had a chance to go bad. So don't be telling me it's just a forecast, you know. And I do think, you know, some of the conversation got a little more thoughtful on social media as we got through. Once people got home, people who, you know, were stranded in their cars, they're going to be cranky. There's nothing you can do for them, you know. And and then once the next day discussion got a lot, I'd say a lot more balanced. There was a lot of anger at New Jersey DOT, as well as anger with the weather forecast. So as long as that anger was sort of equitably distributed, and it was and if you say, do like what the caller did to John and just say, just give me a damn opinion, here, don't move around. Was it a good forecast or a bad forecast? It was a bad forecast. It was a bad forecast. It was not nearly as good as we'd like to see. There was some value in it that could still be extracted. New Jersey managed to screw that part up too. But it was not a good forecast, and so I think you have to own that and accept that. And when you do that, even that kind of then sort of deflates the trolls. When you say, yeah, the forecast was pretty bad, they lose a little steam. So anyway, I'll stop there.
So you're somewhat of a Twitter personality, and of course we can't ask Kevin because he's not on the tweeter anymore. He's in no man's land. But when do you decide, Gary, to block somebody on Twitter?
There's I'm still developing standards for that. I actually but generally they have to reach a level of obnoxiousness and inability to acknowledge any validity in my viewpoint. The idea that what I'm saying has like zero value is usually a good way. I have done the thing where you kind of publicly will retweet them with a comment, and I'll put in here, area resident thinks he's smarter than every meteorologist on the planet regarding today's, this recent event. That usually I'm like around 19,000 followers, and so I usually have some faithful fans who will go and torment the person. I can then kind of step away and move on to other things.
Don't you think that the trolls just feed on that though? They're looking for that kind of response.
Well, yeah, it's sort of like I want to. My logic, good or flawed, is that the better I understand a troll, the better I can savage a troll. So,
show title.
So it's a little bit like I need to kind of speak their language and understand their mindset a little bit, and to do that, I have to engage with them. Like I said, I feel very fortunate. I talk with some of the other people, some broadcast meteorologists, some of the other. I see some of the stuff that's posted on Facebook on the Weather Service page. I don't have that big a problem. I feel like my crew that follows me on Twitter is very well behaved overall, certainly above the Twitter average. That's a subjective opinion, but we tend to talk. I tend to criticize, including I'm the people who are come at me pretty hard. I remind them that I'm the guy who apologized for the January 2015 snow disaster where we forecast 18 inches for Philadelphia and they wound up with 1.5 inches. I publicly apologized for that. So it's a little hard. I can usually come at them with something to deflect or move them away. I know it's like don't feed the trolls, but then it's just then the question is, do you want to let the trolls sort of afflict those who follow you? Because if they keep chatting at you, the people who are following you can see that. So should you block them? The other thing I'll say is I did have one that was really on the bubble, and somebody kind of saw it and was commenting to me, and I said I think my next step might be to turn Twitter into the Roman Colosseum. I will put the tweet out there and tell people to vote on whether or not I block them. Then I will turn it over to the justice of the mob and determine people's fate that way. It will undoubtedly be democratic and very unfair. So, so anyway, that's some of my thoughts on trolls. But I'll just say I'm pretty fortunate. I was much more upset with New Jersey DOT and the governor of New Jersey than I was with anybody who was trolling me on Twitter.
See what you're missing, Kevin? I mean, so Gary, if you could wave a magic wand and go back and do this over again, and let's say you were the acting MIC again at Mount Holly, what would you do differently?
Without knowing the details, I'm going to say some things that may have been almost literally impossible, but I would have, made sure that, very well sure, once, because, we're not surprised by this stuff. People were talking about the storm days in advance. We could see it coming. I would have made sure my winter weather webpage was working. That was a bad misstep right out of the box. It's like your hurricane page not working, and the Hurricane Center's day 5 points, like off your coast. That's a hell of a time to find out that you've got a serious problem. You need to have got that corrected. The other thing would have been much more what if scenario. This expressions of uncertainty. I would have wanted to see it in the forecast discussion. I would have wanted to seen it explored more in some of the text products that went out. That there was a potential to get less snow less sleet and freezing rain with this, and considerably more snow. That was, to me, that was underdone. Those are two things that jump out at me.
Yeah, Gary, I would also add that I'm not sure I ever saw any written material about this, but there were still a lot of leaves on the trees up here. So we had some power outage issues because of the weight of the snow and sleet on those leaves, bringing some of the limbs down. The other thing I would have commented on was, guys, this is the first storm of the season. How many of you have the right tires on your cars?
Yeah, we always, I guess, yeah, those are both good points. And that will be, I guess I'll jump in and say, yeah, third thing, when they were, when you looked at the web page for the National Weather Service, all you saw were winter weather advisories as this event was beginning in New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania, Mount Holly's service area. And they really should have gone with the combined impacts. And one of the things you can take into account is the time of year, that this is the first storm of the season. You can escalate up to a winter storm warning based on some pretty subjective criteria if you're close to, but maybe not quite meeting the numbers. But then you take into account, it was pretty clear the evening commute was going to be blasted in some parts of the state. I don't know why those parts of the state didn't have a warning out from the get-go. So that would be the other thing I'd add. And then the sort of the proof in the pudding is that everything from I-90 along the I-95 corridor, north and west, all did wind up with winter storm warnings in here. So at the end of the day, they did have them up after the damage was done. So if they'd had them up to begin with, that could have helped.
How is the National Weather Service chat used up in that region? This is for John and Gary to kind of coordinate or maybe get input from broadcasters and emergency managers. How's the communication with the chat? Is it pretty widely used there?
It is, right.
At Mount Holly, during the time I was there, not so much. We tried to get it going a couple times, and we just weren't able to get sort of a sustained conversation going. I know that's different from a lot of other weather offices' experience. And the other thing I'll say is that's 2.5 years old. I retired in May of 2016, so I can't possibly talk to how it went this time around. But I'd say back in 2016 and earlier, we did have some problems. There was no problem picking up the phone. TV4, broadcast meteorologists would call us, with some regularities, but it was just always more on a one-on-one basis rather than sort of a group discussion.
Yeah, it is crucial here, and I guess Troy and
surprising,
Kevin in Texas, it's crucial. It is absolutely crucial, and I think the one thing that's really been good here, prior to events, we will pick a time to get on that chat. Typically, it's around midday once the 12Z model data is in, and the Weather Service will allow the broadcast meteorologists to give them input and thoughts on what they should be doing with watches and warnings. It gives us a little equity in the whole process, and we feel like we've got a voice in it. And that's happened within the last 2 or 3 years here, and that has really been good. But again, in my main thing, severe weather, I'm a tornado guy. That's what we do. And the object of the game is to present a unified message across the weather enterprise during life-threatening tornado, severe storms type activity. But with winter storms, it's different. But I still think at least getting some consistency is good. The next question is, did anybody claim to nail the forecast from the private sector? And I'm not saying anybody did. I don't know. But, the Weather Channel, AccuWeather, did anybody say we got it right and everybody else got it wrong?
The one I saw who just pointed out that he got it right would be Joe Bastardi with Weatherbell. That and his numbers were pretty good. I mean, he came out of the box right from the get-go with 2 to 4 in Philly and 4 to 8 north and west of there. That would have been a much better forecast. That was certainly a better forecast than what they were getting out of the Weather Service. I saw, AccuWeather was talking about, Bernie Rayno with AccuWeather was talking about how this forecast, he did a poor job with this forecast. I had communication with one of the forecasters with the weather company up in the Northeast, and they weren't happy with how things went either. So I think there was a lot of I don't want to say anything positive about New Jersey's governor, but I will say when he says this, this gave forecasting a bad name. I think the implied commentary in there is that there weren't really any strong signals that anyone was given, about what was eventually to transpire. So I think it was almost none. I didn't pick up anything. I certainly haven't picked up anything on the broadcast meteorology chatter in the Philadelphia market after the storm that anyone nailed it. I think the answer is not.
Of course, we all know Dr. John got it right. I mean, John's never missed one.
Yeah. We were chasing that forecast all day. We were behind the curve.
The question is, what damage has been done here in terms of credibility? Did the politicians take more of a hit, or did the weather community take more of a hit?
I think they both dragged themselves. I think we all kind of dragged down to the low. They were all dragged down. This was just this forecast was not it was a poor forecast, and then the politicians chose to publicly badmouth the meteorologists. I think it's just everyone sort of tried to find the low spot here of what could have possibly. I'd put it this way: if you blindfolded me and spun me around and gave me a rock to throw at any direction I pick, I'd hit a problem. I mean, it's everywhere. It's the quality of the forecast. It's how the politicians and key decision makers executed on that forecast and misused the good information that was in there. The system as a whole failed. We tried to run, a full day, regular traffic cycle into the teeth of a storm that was not historic by any measure, other than the fact that for early in the season, it's notable. But this is not. We get 4, 6, 8 inches of snow up here. That's not uncommon. So there really were problems everywhere you go. Someone from down south was laughing, at the gridlock. They said that, and they were just kind of saying to me, this is our world. We don't have snow removal equipment. All of yours was gridlocked along with everything else. So that's what it's like down here. We don't, yours was useless because it was all jammed up in traffic, and we just don't have any to run around. So, it was just bad all around. There really aren't, to me, other than some lessons learned on, expressing uncertainty and hopefully getting the politicians out of the habit of publicly bad-mouthing any part of the weather enterprise. Those are things that are better had. When I was at MIC, that was my job. If the governor was upset, that's when I would get a phone call from his chief of staff or someone senior enough to know that I was talking to the governor's representative, and explaining to me in no uncertain terms how they were displeased and why they were displeased. That's the point of relationships. That's the point of telephones. You don't do that publicly. So.
And one more question. Go ahead, Troy.
An editorial note for you, James. I'm not sure that I like meteorologists being compared to politicians. Note made.
I hear you. Okay. So, Gary, what's the worst case scenario? Forecasting 2 feet and getting 1 inch, or forecasting 1 to 2 inches and getting 8 inches? Which kind of bus is the worst for you?
Well, for me, it's pretty clear that the latter of those two. A lot of people are angry when stuff is shut down and you get a quarter or less of the snow that you forecast. No one's happy, and obviously in the extreme event, that's what drove the one time I apologized. But this is obviously, we had people stranded for 6, 8, 10 hours. In some cases, that some of that describes school buses. You had jackknife tractor trailers. I mean, the whole thing just got ugly quickly, and became a threat to public safety. The other scenario you mentioned is the forecasters have some egg on their face, and the society as a whole was overprepared for that event. What we just went through is people are literally stuck on the highway, and in some cases there was a danger. People were turning their cars off because there was danger of running out of gas. And so it's just that's much more hazardous.
Yeah, the thing in 2014, we had people that ran out of gas. They were down there for 10, 15 hours. It was a humanitarian crisis, and we caused it because we missed the impact. But we got to take a very quick break, and we're going to come back with a weather roundup. And Gary and John, we want to know how cold it's going to be for Thanksgiving up there. And we'll do picks of the week and a whole lot more. We're far from over as WeatherBrains rolls along. Stay with us. Here's Tony.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
For this Thanksgiving week, how about a little bit of science in your kitchen? You ever wondered why so many Thanksgiving and other recipes begin with preheat oven to 350 degrees? The answer lies not in physics, but more in chemistry, specifically the Maillard reaction. And it's the most widely practiced chemical reaction in the world, but it really wasn't well understood until the 1950s. Whether it's your Thanksgiving turkey, a perfectly grilled steak, or a crusty loaf of bread, that savory flavor is the result of the Maillard reaction. Named for French chemist Louis-Camille Maillard, who in 1912 was experimenting with the way raw ingredients change color and produce carbon dioxide when heated, he thought that his research might be valuable to medicine, specifically to the treatment of diabetes. Keep in mind that this was before insulin was even discovered. But it was USDA chemist John Hodge who broke down the complex reactions going on in a paper published in the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry back in 1953. The reaction kicks off once temperatures rise above the boiling point. This dehydrates the surface of the food and launches a reaction between amino acids and sugars. This begins a whole complex chain of reactions. Varying amino acids and sugars in the foods produce varying compounds and therefore different flavors. But none of this happens until the temperature moves beyond 300. That 350-degree oven ensures that everything gets kicked off. Elsewhere in the sky, the InSight mission is set to land on Mars on Monday, November 26th. Nice. Live coverage on NASA TV begins at 2 p.m. Eastern, ahead of the anticipated landing at 2:54. InSight will be looking at Mars differently. While previous missions have been focusing on the planet's surface and atmosphere, InSight's going to peer within the planet's crust, taking its internal temperature and studying how heat flows in and out, as well as listening for Mars quakes with the most sensitive seismograph we've ever sent to another planet. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Doing the show on the 19th of November, Thanksgiving week. So, Gary, how cold will it be in Philadelphia on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty cold. I think the temperatures are going to stay pretty much below freezing the whole day. And there's going to be some wind chill in the morning. The actual coldest air temperature is going to be looks like Friday morning, right after Thanksgiving. And then we're right now the forecast is for 19 in Philadelphia, but it'll be in the 20s, during the day, and even the Thursday morning low temperatures like in the low 20s. So very cold Thanksgiving. Probably we're certainly going to see some single digits up as you go up into the Poconos in northern New Jersey. And right now I don't know that we're going to get anyone below zero, but it's going to be a really cold Thanksgiving.
Same thing for you, huh, John?
Yeah, a couple of degrees colder, James. In fact, that Gary just reminded me, one of the things I was looking at in terms of temperatures on Thursday morning was Saranac Lake, which was where some of the coldest air was that was funneling its way down along the Piedmont. Well, Saranac Lake was just above zero. That's how cold that high was before the storm advanced. As Gary was saying, we're going to get an Arctic high in here, so I agree. Friday morning for us, 16 to 18 degrees. Thursday, probably our coldest family football game in many years, mid-20s.
Wow. Ouch. And down here, we're going to miss that. Kevin, let's go to Kevin first in Wichita Falls. What's your Thanksgiving looking like?
Oh, it looks nice. Around 60 for a high, and then a little warmer for the rest of the week until a cold front mid-weekend.
Troy's down there in Austin, Tejas, where it's always nice.
Always nice and sort of south of all the action. Got a little disturbance passes over the next, by tomorrow night into Wednesday, and maybe a sprinkle out of that. I think Thanksgiving Day around Austin looks pretty good, even though clouds may linger, and there may be a sprinkle on Friday. But the weekend, I think we get back in the 70s around here in Austin by the time we get into Friday and into Saturday, and then another cold front due Sunday, and that'll cool us down late weekend, first part of next week.
And down here in the deep south, looks like our next big rain will be Friday night with a wave coming in from the west. And the biggest football game of the year is played down here this Saturday in my state. It's Alabama versus Auburn, known as the Iron Bowl. And that's if you botch this forecast, you might as well just move to Venezuela for 5 years. It's problematic, but it looks as though we're fairly confident the rain will be over in time for that football game. It'll rain Friday night and early Saturday. The kickoff's at 2:30 in Tuscaloosa. Should be in the 60s. Should be a pretty pleasant day. And for that game down here, we've had tornadoes and floods and ice and anything goes this time of the year. So it looks like it should be a fairly decent day for that. But I was going to ask you guys up in the Northeast, especially John and Gary, does having this type of cold air so early in the season have any correlation with the rest of the season? I know what my answer is down here, but what about up there?
One of the senior forecasters when I was working at Mount Holly did a study, to try to see if he could use short term, and he found October temperatures and then even more importantly November temperatures using the month as an average, looking at the average for the entire month. Had some predictive value for December, January, and February. So an individual cold snap, not necessarily, but if the pattern is cold in November, it does suggest a cold next 3 months. So we'll see. It's been chilly.
From a national perspective, right now we have 26.5% of the nation covered by snow. And if you're curious, 1 year ago today, it was 15.1%.
All right.
How's Siberia? Anybody looked at Siberia lately to see what the snow cover's like up there, the cold? I have not. That is often a clue for us down here, but we'll see. The hurricane season's winding down. This is November 19th. I think we can stick a fork in it for this year. It's been a wild year. And now we deal with the winter season here. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm a little concerned about December and the severe weather season down here in the deep south, where I have a funny feeling it might be fairly active. We're in the core of the late fall tornado season, so we'll see. But anyway, we got to do picks of the week here. We got to get on time tonight, so we're going to go around the horn. Everybody's going to share something that is weather related. It's going to be a website, hardware, software, book, anything remotely related to weather. So let's start with Kevin. I saw a pick of the week float by on the email here a second ago. What you got, Kev?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with weather, but it is the big
great
blockbuster article that came out in the New York Times last week. I hope, has everybody read it? Show of hands. Everybody has read the big New York Times article yet? Nothing. Okay. Oh, you did read it, James?
Yeah. This is the one you sent the link, right?
Delay, deny. Well, I sent you something previous to that. This is the big 6,000 word actual New York Times.
The one, the Facebook thing, right?
Yeah, delay, deny, and
yeah.
That was pretty damning. Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg did not have a good week after that came out.
No, they sure didn't.
Tuesday, I think it was. Yeah, and I'm not going to preach about it, but to me, it's just the others. We've gone on and on and on about whether social media is a good place for weather information, but the stuff on the other side of this argument, the horrible, terrible things that they're doing that I've talked about for a long time and that we talked about with the Frontline special. And this was just another big example of these people are bad news and bad for the country and bad for people. And it's a pretty good article. It makes me, I didn't feel bad about getting off. I do miss some of the interactions there, but it makes me realize that it was the right thing to do.
And for those that don't know, Kevin deleted his Facebook and Twitter account a couple of weeks ago. He is totally off the social media, and he doesn't have the shakes. He seems to be okay. Troy, what you got for us this week?
I say, way to go, Kevin. That'll be my response to that. I got to give a plug in. I know y'all have probably done this before, but I didn't stumble across this until the last week. Our friends out at I assume at the Weather Service out at Western Region headquarters, they have this great weather and hazards data viewer. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's at, I'm going to tap and send the web address along, but it really, it's really quite interesting. If you go in, I think it's www.wrh.noaa.gov/map. It's pretty easy, and really is cool. There are a lot of different layers on here, temperatures and things like that. Way to go, National Weather Service. I think Western Region headquarters on that weather and hazards data viewer.
All right, awesome. And these links will be up on the show notes on weatherbrains.com. My pick of the week, it is actually a PowerPoint file on snow microphysics and the top-down approach to forecasting winter weather precipitation type. Went through a seminar on this maybe 4 years ago and thought it was absolutely excellent. And again, where we are down here in the Deep South, we don't get that much practice, but I thought the approach was really sound and really good. And so if you want to know more about forecasting good old precipitation type, which can be a nightmare this time of the year, you might want to look at that PowerPoint file. All right, Dr. John, what is your pick of the week, sir?
So my pick will be a link to a summary article discussing a recent presentation at the AMS 29th Conference on Severe Local Storms. And the article, written by Steve Nelson at Peachtree City, talking about the use of autumn leaves as a tool for looking at debris signatures for tornadic storms on radar.
I skimmed it when you sent it. It's really interesting.
That's very interesting. All right. And again, we'll check that out for sure. All right, Gary, we've stalled for you long enough here. What you got a pick for us this week?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of a late contender here. Skies were kind of hazy around here, and some people were mentioning it to me on Twitter. I did some checking. One person actually kind of hit the jackpot, and I looked at the HRR model, the smoke portion of that, and we actually had a plume from the California fires affecting the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast region today. I put that graphic out on Twitter showing where the plume was about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and my Twitter account just kind of almost exploded. That actually turned out to be extraordinarily popular. People from Washington, D.C. up into southern New England were all commenting about how, they were wondering why it was so hazy today, why the sky it was kind of a little bit of an odd looking brownish color to it, and so that there and a lot of connection, then a lot of sort of emotional connection then to the devastation with the California wildfires, and that we could see even just a little bit of what's happened out there all the way here on the East Coast. So I'll send that link, but it's if you just Google HRR smoke, you'll get it comes right up. But I'll send you the link.
Yes, great product. So before we wrap things up here, Gary, I would say of the folks with and I know you're retired, but you're MIC for a long time. You and Rick Smith really have figured out social media to some degree. What's your secret to being so successful? You got a large number of followers. You engage with people. You push really good information. What's some tips you can give people to be so successful on the social side?
Yeah, I'm still exploring, why people react the way they do. But this afternoon, even this what I just mentioned, I had no idea that smoke forecast graphic would draw such a strong reaction. It can't, I got started because I became convinced that meteorologists need to do a better job of speaking to people, to speak science less and to speak with people more and speak in a language they can understand. Social media is a great way to interact with people and give them a chance to talk to a subject matter expert. So the other thing is, if I have the time, I try not to ignore a question. Sometimes I have to say I don't know or I don't have time, but I try to get back to people, with a response, and I always couch it in a way where, unless I'm talking to someone who's another meteorologist, obviously I'll get scientific. But I try to talk it to like you're literally talking to a member of the general public. So don't start talking about vorticity and stuff. It's time to let that go and talk plain English. So my people seem to respond very positively to the idea that they can ask somebody a question and get an answer back. So you can't answer everyone. I try to, but you can't. And some things are obviously silly or frivolous, and you can let those go. But I'd say just the ability to talk to people and do it in a way that's respectful. Don't hide behind the science. Show the science where it helps to convey the message, and then take it from there. But it started because I believed we had a problem in the science, in the field of operational meteorology, that we had a serious problem with communication. And my goal was to try to see how social media could address that.
Gary, what would your response be if I said that the Weather Service needed a public version of the chat?
I'm willing. At this point, I'm willing to consider just about anything. I think that we're ready to try some new things. Social media's been around for a while. NWS chat's been around for a while. The system, I think, is ready for some more changes. I don't know if that would be a good change or not. I certainly would be willing to consider it. I think we need to be up for some new adventures. This recent storm we had shows that we clearly still have a problem with communicating to people, what we know in a way that they'll take away as actionable intelligence. Something like that could be the way to go.
James, what did you think of the New York Times article?
You're trying to get me to delete my FaceBag account, aren't you? I know what you're trying to do. Kevin wants me off the Twitter, off the FaceBag, off the Insta, and off the Snapchat.
Past 3 weeks, you've done nothing but bring up the fact that I have left. I haven't brought it up. I'm asking about the article. What did you think?
Well, no, I'm not happy with these people. I mean, I think the article is great. It uncovered the problems. I think they're in the process of what could be a decline, a long-term decline. There were people that honestly thought AOL, that was going to be it. AOL is now the internet. Nothing will ever change. So where's AOL now? It doesn't even exist. And I think that could very well be the fate for Facebook at some point. And then something else will come along. I'm just along for the ride. When Facebook dies, I'll move on to something else. And to me, it's almost in a death spiral. It's going to take a long time, but the younger people don't use it. The older people that use it, they're going to die off. It's kind of like almost television audience kind of stuff here. So, but again, my job is to mitigate loss of life during severe weather. And if I can reach people on Snapchat or Instagram or the FaceBag or the Twitter that I could never reach on television, and if that line of communication through that platform can reach them and mitigate some loss of life, I'll still use that. I mean, it's.
Did you watch special yet?
No, I have not. No. Okay. So, Gary, you going to get off the FaceBag because of Kevin here?
I only tweet. I do not. I think I have a Facebook account. The last time I posted was probably 7 years ago.
Oh.
And I don't do the Instagram or Snapchat. So I'm pretty finicky. So Twitter is it.
There you go. You're on the tweeters. So, but Gary, if you would just plug that Twitter account, because again, it's a marvelous, marvelous follow. Great weather information. He does respond. And look, this is an MIC for a long time. This is a brilliant meteorologist. So plug your Twitter account. Go.
Okay. Well, it's just based on my name. It's at Gary Zatkowski. So if you can spell it or just Google it, it'll pop right up. So I'm happy. I'm still active on it. I still like to talk. I don't do it as much as I did. I'm spending a little more time with the grandchildren and doing some travel with my wife now that I'm retired. So there's times where I go dark, which didn't happen quite as often in the past. So, but nonetheless, certainly if a governor starts to say something stupid about the weather, you'll probably find me. Find me on there. So I don't think I'll ever, I'm not planning on them. I don't anticipate them stopping saying stupid stuff. So I'll probably be on Twitter for a while.
Fantastic. And if you want to get in touch with Kevin, send him a postcard. Kevin, what's your mailing address over there?
It's James at James Fan. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right. So we've got to. put a bow on this thing. WeatherBrains is typically done Monday nights at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, and many people watch us live at live.bigbrainsmedia.com. But we know most of you listen, and we thank you for that. Aubrey is off this week for Thanksgiving. Hopefully she'll be back next week with the email. If you'd like to send us an email, it's email@weatherbrains.com. We've had a bunch this past week. We'll do a long email segment next week. And that's about it. Show notes are on weatherbrains.com. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, and God bless. Hey, Gary, thanks for your time. You were great to come on the show tonight. We went to talk about that thing last week. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Yep, you're welcome. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Gary.